The interest rate movement and housing affordability, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, interest rates needed to rise to more normal levels, and they will continue to rise over this year. In terms of housing affordability, basically people are getting it wrong. They're not comparing apples with apples. What we've got to compare is an average dwelling price across Australia, not just capital cities, with household disposable income, how much dollars we've got in the pocket. And if you look at that over the last 5 or 6 years, basically housing affordability has gone sideways. It hasn't deteriorated, hasn't got much better, basically pretty much stable over the last couple of years.
So how would you explain someone of my age? I know you're a bit, you probably weren't even thought about back in the 1950s, but 1960 to buy a property, how difficult compared to 2010? I've been in real estate for 30 odd years. It's easier for me to sell a property to a first home buyer today than it was when I first got into it. Why?
Well, it's interesting. You go back to 1960 and it's basically the essentials like food, clothing, transport took a lot of our budget. Housing was a lot cheaper then, took up a less proportion of our salary, and that's because the essentials were taking up far more. But over time we have got more prosperous. Australians have seen their standard of living rise. Now that food, clothing, housing has taken up a much smaller proportion of our budget, as a result we can allocate more to the family home.
Now, there's talked about a lot. Your personal view on what's happening with interest rates in the short, medium and long term?
Well, the cash rate, let's go to the cash rate right from the start. Cash rate sitting at 4%. The Reserve Bank believes a more normal level of the cash rate for a normal functioning economy, and that's what they believe that we're going to get by the end of this year. We're going to have an economic growth rate up around about normal. We should have a cash rate something in the order of 4.5%, perhaps a little bit higher, and it's our view that by the end of this year we'll see the cash rate something in the order of 4.5% to 5%. Our economy is recovering, our job market is tightening. If we kept interest rates too low for too long, we'd run ourselves in the same sorts of problems that they got to in other parts of the world, particularly the US.
So with the interest rates starting to rise again and with all of the dynamics that are happening at the moment, is the great Australian dream of home ownership at risk?
Oh no, that's certainly not the case. If you look at housing affordability over time, it's basically gone sideways rather than anything else. Interest rates are going to rise. People have got to do their homework on the fact that interest rates are getting back to more normal levels. We've got to remember that the cash rate's sitting at 4%. In the past economic cycles, the low point was 4.75%, so we've still got super low interest rates here in Australia. It is the case that things like food, clothing, transportation, they're still taking up smaller proportions of our budget.
Now, I've heard you, Craig, talk about supply and demand and the shortage of available properties across the nation. Any comment, has it changed at all?
It is still a case that we've got super strong demand for properties, but supply isn't keeping up. And this is one of the fundamental concerns for the Reserve Bank, one about supply. They want state governments and federal governments to be doing more in terms of the creation of more land. Things like looking at planning laws to be able to change perhaps commercial property to residential property zoning so we can get more properties built. This is going to be an issue, but the way that a lot of people are addressing it too is that over a long period of time we've had less and less people in our bigger and bigger homes. So we've got bigger homes, but we've only got basically 2 people in them. Now we've got more Generation Y staying home, we've got more generations occupying the same house. We're utilising our houses better, and that's a very positive thing also.
Will that help contain or restrict the burst out of rental prices, do you think?
Well, I think that's going to be a case in the short term, that we'll be able to respond flexibly to it. You know, if we have got a 4 or 5 bedroom house and there's only, so the mother and father at home, well, they have got the ability to be able to have children staying for longer, perhaps, so the grandparents, perhaps making greater utilisation. It's more at the short term rather than the long term. In the longer, medium to longer term, we still have to be producing more homes.
Now, at the end of 2009, we had the conclusion of the stimulus package or the boost for first home buyers. That was impacting our rental division. We got a large rental division where people were breaking leases and moving into their own homes. Do you think they'll move back to the family home, like we just talked about, and then rent the property or sell it? What impact do you think that will have?
Well, I think we're going to get back to more normal conditions. We had a bringing forward of purchases. First home buyers, a lot of activity in 2009. We go into 2010 and things have changed. I've spoken recently to a home builder in New South Wales, and they say we're going gangbusters in terms of building homes, but the inquiry from first home buyers, well, that's dried up completely. So I think now we're going to a situation, less first home buyers moving into the market, building their dream homes. They're going to be renting again, and that has potential to put upward pressure on rents.
I can listen to Craig James for hours, and Grantley Stevens, who's
likewise, Craig's a bit of a fan of mine. I must admit, he's a very knowledgeable man. He's always very interesting to listen to.
But he's so normal, isn't he? He puts complicated issues into a very simple format.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone understands, exactly.
Yeah, no, it's good. Now, we're heading off to Behind the Blinds, have a look at some sensational property. So let's head there and we'll be back in a moment.